Hello, my name is Justin the Clue, and I'm here today with
Will Sloan.
And you're listening to the Important Cinema Club. And today, it's a very extra important episode, because we're talking about two films that I have loved all my life. First off...
That can't be true.
Arguably the best... Not even arguably. It is the best action movie of all time.
Yeah, sure, I'll buy it.
Hard Boiled.
Yeah.
And a film that probably reaches the exact same levels of explosions and bullets, Bad Boys 2. Now, why are we doing these two movies? Well, we kind of picked them because on the surface, if you tried to explain them to someone, they sound like the same movie.
Right. I want to jump in and say that when you say we picked them, you picked them. I don't want any blame for...
And I want to jump in and say, I went, hey, Will, maybe we could do Bad Boys 2 and Hard Boiled? I don't know, maybe. And you jumped on it like a hyena on a piece of meat.
What a liar. This is a real Rashomon situation here. I don't remember this at all.
So, when was the first time that you saw Hard Boiled? And for people that don't know, Hard Boiled is a 1992 film directed by John Woo. This is kind of, at the time, was his swan song from Hong Kong, because he was going to America to make Hard Target. And from what I read...
With Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yes. From what I read, he said that Hard Boiled was made because... One, he wanted to make a dirty, hairy, cop-style movie, which he felt he had never really gotten a chance to do. And two, he wanted a demo reel to be able to show to America of what he could do, which seems crazy to me, because he'd been making Hong Kong action movies for almost 10 years at that point.
Yeah, I guess he just wanted to put all his best stuff in that last one.
And the thing is that, like, Hollywood, they don't care. They don't care, like, how well choreographed an action scene or something like that. Like, that doesn't really sell it to them.
So cynical. You don't think they just want to make the best stuff that they can?
That Hollywood wants to make the best stuff?
I mean, like, just look at Hard Target. Great movie. Classic masterpiece. From the Dream Factory.
One of the strongest Ted Raimi performances to ever grace the screen.
I don't know. I'm a fan of Skinner with Tracy Lords.
The serial killer Ted Raimi film?
Directed by Yvonne Naj, Heidi Fleiss's boyfriend.
Who's Heidi Fleiss?
The famous Hollywood madam of the 90s. Oh, you got to read up on this. This is Hollywood history.
And so we're talking about Hard Boiled and Bad Boys 2.
Can we do an episode on Skinner? I've actually never seen it.
No, absolutely not. I was talking to someone about doing Bad Boys 2 for the podcast, and she was like, wait, aren't you guys doing, like, classic movies or movies that have some kind of importance cinematically?
Yeah. Well, Bad Boys 2 has some importance cinematically. Actually, one of the reasons why, and, like, I guess I'll come clean, I did leap at your idea to do this, and the main reason why I leapt at it was because I've never seen Bad Boys 2. Mm-hmm. I try to avoid Michael Bay whenever I can.
Is it true that you had a copy on your shelf, though?
Well, I did, because a few months ago, somebody had curbed a bunch of DVDs. I swear to God, and one of them was Bad Boys 2, and one of them was Passion of the Christ.
Have you watched Passion of the Christ?
Well, I mean, I saw it when it came out. I picked it up because I thought, oh, this might be interesting to revisit, and I have not.
But Bad Boys 2, you finally got a chance to watch it.
Yeah.
Now, like we were saying, where was the first time that you saw Hard Boiled? Was it like an entry film to Hong Kong cinema for you? Or...
Oh, I think I'd probably seen enough Hong Kong cinema. I think Jackie Chan is sort of like an entry point for a lot of people. I think I saw Better Tomorrow before I saw it. But yeah, like, Hard Boiled is one of those movies definitely when you're like a teenager being interested in Hong Kong film and, being very sad and lonely. And
I remember, I actually think it was one of the first, like, pure Hong Kong films, even beyond Jackie Chan. Like, I don't think I've seen any Jackie Chan films. We rented The Killer and Hard Boiled on the same weekend.
Wow.
And it's funny because me and my brother were kind of obsessed with the movies. Mm-hmm. And if I recall correctly, we ended up spending all our allowance on getting those Fox Lorber discs that were like $30 at the time, and we split it. And the way that it worked out is, I think that I got The Killer and my brother got Hard Boiled, and I think that says a lot about our personalities. And I even posted a photo from the movie on Facebook, and my brother was like, I remember going frame by frame over that shot when we watched it. Because something that Hard Boiled has is like a real replayability as far as action movies go.
Yeah. How many times have you seen it?
500 times.
Sure,
like,
yeah.
It's one of those movies that when you want someone like to see a good gunfight, you go and you get the movie Hard Boiled. And especially because the climax is 40 minutes of gunfights. And it's a real litmus test. Because if someone's like, that's okay. you know that they're never going to be interested
Yeah.
in anything from Hong Kong.
I remember seeing that movie, you know, as a teenager, and like, I don't know. This is such a banal memory because every teenager who sees Hardboiled has this memory, but it was just like a mind-altering, life-changing experience. Like that 40-minute hospital scene made me sweat as a teenager. It was so intense.
One of the few movie memories that I remember playing it over and over again. Like that day, I had to watch that movie again.
Yeah.
Because it was that good. Now, Bad Boys 2. I also have memories linked to this because I remember it was during the summer and we were camping and we decided to go see a movie in the cinema. And my dad picked Bad Boys 2. Why? I don't know. Because there's no way that I had seen Bad Boys 1 at that point. And I remember it blowing my mind. It was the coolest thing that I ever saw. Now, I did a little bit of mental gymnastics. How old I was probably 13 or 14 when it came out.
I was 14 for sure.
So maybe I was a little bit older than that. So which gives me no excuse.
Well, you know, when I was 14, I already considered myself a bit of a cinephile. You know,
really?
A bit of an aesthete, you might say. So I think at that time I'd already caught on to the popular received wisdom that Michael Bay is not a good filmmaker. So I was very, very much in. And so I didn't see Bad Boys 2 until yesterday.
But you'd heard about it, right? It's got kind of a cult.
Well, I've heard that, like, kind of. I don't know if it's right to associate this with the vulgar auteur crowd, but the Michael Bay apologists sort of look to this one as like his definitive statement, the most Michael Bay movie.
I'm going to go on record and say that I like Michael Bay as a filmmaker. I like his style with caveats because watching Bad Boys 2 again, I had watched it a few years before and found it incredibly obnoxious. All the stuff that I had found kind of cool and thrilling when I saw it the first time or the subsequent times on DVD, I found just grating and endless. Because this movie is 2 hours and 17 minutes.
Yeah.
Which for a sequel to a movie, Bad Boys, which at best was a light comedy, is insane.
Yeah.
And Hard Boiled at the same time, though, is 2 hours and 9 minutes. But rewatching it again, I didn't feel any of that. It flows so smoothly in a way that Bad Boys just doesn't. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to talk about action a lot because that's really it's not really the characters or anything like that attracted to us. So when you think of Michael Bay as a filmmaker, even just watching Bad Boys 2, what went through your mind?
Well, I try not to think of Michael Bay as filmmaker. And, you know, this is the thing. I'm a little reluctant to even talk about Michael Bay because I feel like, you know, I don't want to fall into the received wisdom, the cliche thing of saying Michael Bay sucks because it's so easy. Like, he's the easiest target. At the same time, I really do hate him. I mean, there's a reason he is where he is.
But why do you hate him?
Because his movies are just like noisy messes that make no sense and are unpleasant to watch, and the comedy is bad and they're sort of hateful.
Don't you love all the crazy camera moves and slow motion?
I mean, no, I don't. I acknowledge that he is a man who has a style. I also, not only do I hate his movies, but I really don't like him as a man. Is that fair to say?
Oh, I would completely agree with that
Whenever
sentiment.
I see him interviewed, because I remember, okay, here's my experience with the oeuvre of Michael Bay. I saw Armageddon on VHS. I saw Pearl Harbor at the time.
Theatrically?
No, on DVD. Right?
I saw it theatrically. I believe twice.
Okay, well, I saw it once and that was enough.
Oh, you don't have the director's cut on DVD?
I
can
watched the director's cut on DVD. I saw The Island when I reviewed the DVD later. And yeah, I think that...
I'd like to point out that Michael Bay thinks that The Island failed as a movie because the climax wasn't big enough. He says that on the commentary track.
Well, you know, when I reviewed the DVD for that, I dipped into the Michael Bay commentary, and there's one part set during like a club scene, a futuristic club scene, where it's like... And then I was like, to my cinematographer, I was like, have you guys even been to a club in the last 5 years?
So you basically are painting Michael Bay as the most aggravating filmmaker working today.
I find him, like, just as a man, as an artist, I find him loathsome.
But what about John Woo? Love John Woo? Hate John Woo?
I love the John Woo movies that I love. You know, that mid-period John Woo, firing on all cylinders, Hong Kong John Woo, sure.
So Hard Boiled being the purest form of that kind of talent and style that he had. Now, I should point out that I don't think that Hard Boiled is the best film that John Woo made. I would probably have to give that to the overdramatic glory of The Killer. Specifically, melodramatic glory of The Killer.
Sure, although, I saw The Killer after I saw Hard Boiled, and you can't help but
but it's
be
like
a little bit
the
anticlimactic,
It's like riding the biggest roller coaster. But I think that dramatically, The Killer works for me in ways that Hard Boiled does not.
I agree. Do you like Bullet in the Head, his wacky Vietnam War drama?
I love Bullet in the Head, but I have an anecdote about that. Is that when we started doing private screenings of Laser Blast Film Society, I put aside a whole evening to watch Bullet in the Head. And I'm like, you guys are going to love this. It's so fun. And it was the most crushingly depressing experience. That film is not fun. That film has tons of gunfights in it.
Yeah, and awful, atrocity stuff. Yeah.
Like, when it ended, people were like, I cannot believe that just happened. We actually did a podcast on Bullet in the Head when we were doing Laser Blast Film Society screenings that you can actually find online. I should link to it as a bonus to this.
Sure.
Of the reaction of the people after they watched it.
Sure.
But I mean, John Woo is a filmmaker who, he really wants to make a musical. He wants to make one so bad.
Is that actually true?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
He says the musical is his favorite genre. And for a long time in the mid-2000s, he was going to make one with Hugh Jackman. And it just kind of fell through. Oh. And that is definitely seen in his, the way that he shoots an action scene. And for people that don't know, a little bit of biography on John Woo, he kind of started as an assistant director for Chang Che, the famous Shaw Brothers director. And from then he actually started directing kung fu films that, Last Hurrah for Chivalry, which are kind of, they're good kung fu films, but they don't have the style that became known for him. And then he started making comedies, to the point that he became known as the king of comedy. And that was his style. And people would have probably assumed that that's what he would have continued to do until he made A Better Tomorrow. And after that, everything changed. Because once he had imposed that kind of action filmmaking and people had seen it, that's all they wanted to see. Mm-hmm. And so Hard Boiled, like we said, is a summation of that kind of style.
And how would you sum up his aesthetic?
Melodramatic, using film style in an irrealistic way, but in a way that completely flows. When we talk about Michael Bay and the kind of stylistic tics that he uses, they all kind of smash together, just butting heads. John Woo, he'll use crazy stuff like freeze frames in the middle of a scene, slow motion going back to normal motion, without ever losing the flow of what's happening. I mean, just take the first action scene that takes place in a tea house in Hard Boiled. Any other filmmaker, that is nonsense. You don't know what's going on. Technically, you don't even know who the main players are, and it's not really explained when that scene starts. And it's only through the action that everything starts being defined. Mm-hmm. And, when you watch something like that, do you feel he has a good handle on action?
Yeah, I mean, compared to Michael Bay, I can tell what's happening, and I know what's going on at any given time. Also, it was just funny watching Bad Boys 2, where Bad Boys 2 is just a pornographically violent movie, and you don't feel anything in it, and that opening action scene in Hard Boiled, the tea room actually has some grit to it. It feels like a real lived environment, and as a result, all the action carries more weight, and you start to fear more for the innocent bystanders who are there. Everything just carries more weight.
I mean, if you take Bad Boys 2 and the big gunfight they have when all the cars kind of crash together and the racist Jamaicans come out with machine guns, that the geography of that scene is a mess. You don't know what's going on, who's firing at who.
That scene actually hurt my eyes when I was watching it, and that's not a joke. My eyes literally hurt from watching it.
And if you take the tea house, which has what feels like a dozen people shooting at each other, and they haven't even really been established as good guys or bad guys, but you quickly get a sense of what's going on.
It's interesting you bring that up, because I feel like in Bad Boys 2, we're kind of thrown headfirst into what the plot is. And, forgive me, I've never seen Bad Boys 1, and at the rate I'm going, I never will see Bad Boys 1. But I feel like in Bad Boys 2, I never quite figured out who these two bad boys are, what their relationship is to each other exactly. What is the bond that unites them? Who is anyone? The movie, I just didn't know who anyone was and why they were doing what they were doing.
Which is funny, because in Hard Boiled, it quickly becomes clear, Charing Fat is a police officer. He's a Dirty Harry type.
Yeah.
He loves jazz music, where he goes to a bar that John Woo is the bartender at.
Yeah.
And he has all these hopes and things that he wants. He wants wants a new apartment. He wants the girl at the office to kind of like him more than she does. Well, in Bad Boys 2, you're like, what are Martin Lawrence and Will Smith doing?
Well, they're just awful people. First of all, they're terrible psychopaths who I hate. They only speak to each other in terms of kind of leaden banter, and later on when there's the scene where they cry in each other's arms and they're like, bad boys, we ride together, we die together. It's like, well, what is this? Like, did they actually have a real relationship? And like, what do they, like, you could take any 30 minutes of this movie and just cut it out and it would have no impact. Like, and it just alternates between big awful action scenes and these kind of comedy bits that add nothing to anything.
And these comedy bits are actively offensive.
I hate them.
In a way that, like, only the best of Hong Kong Wong Jing style comedy could deliver. Like, them seemingly being gay is a big comedy bit to the point that an angry black woman is like, I don't want to do a funny voice.
Yeah,
she's
yeah.
like, don't let my babies hear this. Like, it's awful.
If I could, like, sum up Michael Bay's sense of humor in 2 words, it would be no homo. That's Michael Bay to me. And that's why I know that his film Pain and Gain was a bit of a cause celeb among...
I'm a big fan of Pain and Gain.
I haven't seen it. And the reason I haven't seen it is because I know Michael Bay's sense of humor, and I don't relish the idea of a Michael Bay comedy.
But I think that the thing about Pain and Gain that makes it work is that Michael Bay's style is a perfect melding to the story, because Pain and Gain is about people who think they're awesome, but they're big fucking losers. But Michael Bay shoots it like they're awesome, which makes it even funnier. Now, is he in on the joke? Probably not. He's Michael Bay.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen him in interviews and stuff, and I don't want to support that man.
What if that's all like an Andy Kaufman-esque shtick?
Then... great. That's amazing that he has been able to marshal these resources.
Have you ever read about Michael Bay when he was first coming up in the music video industry? And that he was part of Propaganda, I believe, with people like David Fincher, and that Michael Bay would just sit in the screening room and watch all the music videos of his peers, and then go out and just imitate them almost shot for shot. All he wanted to be was liked by the people that he was working with, and to create something that they would think was as cool as what they were doing.
Interesting.
Because when you look at Michael Bay, the first thing I don't think is jock. The first thing I think of is a nerd who wants to be a jock.
Yeah, I'll buy that. And he always has this kind of defensive quality when he talks about his work, because, you know, somebody who is that as in need of validation as you say he is.
Well, I don't know.
Well, maybe, but definitely taking his critical bric-a-brats, whatever that word is. I've never said that in my life. Well, yeah, like the critics have definitely hated his movies, and he's always kind of has this defensive posture of, well, I don't make my movies for critics, I make my movies for the public.
And the question is, do the public like his movies? Now I'm talking about like the garbage people that you like to say go to movies and don't know what they're about to see.
I don't recall ever saying that, although that is 98% of the film-going audience, so clearly they outnumber us.
Yes.
So yes, they do like him.
I mean, there's 4 Transformer films, and no one's going to argue that those films... I remember...
I have met people who would argue that they liked them. I mean, they may be some of those garbage people, though.
I remember seeing the first Transformer in theaters, being so excited, because at the time, I kind of loved Michael Bay, and the kind of style he would bring the film. Well, Transformers is going to be awesome. I fell asleep an hour and 30 minutes in.
I had a roommate who made me watch it. This was the summer that Transformers 2 came out, and he was so high on Transformers 2. He
was high on Transformers 2?
He loved
That's
it.
One of the worst movies I have ever seen in my life.
According to my summer roommate, it was, and I quote, literally on par with The Dark Knight, unquote. And so he made me watch Transformers 1, and it was just an awful experience, just a nightmare.
Really?
Yeah.
But going back to Bad Boys 2, I want to talk about, when you're comparing it to Hard Boiled, we talked about how the leads, you have no idea what's going in Bad Boys 2. But how about how sympathetic they are as characters? Because when action is happening, right, you usually have to care about what's going on, which is a weird thing to say about Hong Kong films, because a lot of Hong Kong films, especially action movies, live in a kind of bubble where you can watch the fight scene out of everything that's going on and understand what's going on.
Well, in Hard Boiled, I feel like it's redeemed somewhat by this, but it has a moral code in its center. There's the scene where Chow Yun-fat sees Tony Leung on his yacht, and Tony is making these paper cranes for everyone he kills. It's like, you know, you can say that's simplistic or whatever, but it gives the movie just a fundamental, like, respect for human life, or the characters have a fundamental respect for it.
Even though that when they shoot people, they shoot them like 30 times.
Yeah, but it's like, or later in the movie when Tony Leung accidentally shoots a cop, like, you feel that shot. Like, they actually care somewhat.
And they kind of take a beat to talk about it.
Yeah, that's right. And in fact, that's followed by one of the most celebrated stylistic passages of the movie, which is that long unbroken shot where the two of them go on the elevator and then upstairs and they kind of debrief about this, and you know, they're kind of freaking out about having shot a cop.
Even to be a spoil sport, that shot has a lot of hidden cuts.
I know. But I bring that up because Bad Boys 2 is full of like gimmicky stylistic
kind of
shots.
nonsense,
yeah. That for no reason. Whereas that shot in Hard Boiled is to emphasize the moment and to sort of be with the characters in that moment and just take a breath and meditate on what we've just seen.
Well, Bad Boys 2, the shot that spins around the room when they're fighting the Jamaicans. What kind of, you know, thematic resonance does that have?
It doesn't.
But I remember when I saw it the first time, I loved that shot.
Sure.
But watching it now, I'm like, why are they fighting these people? And that scene has some nasty, unmotivated violence, too.
Yeah. And, you know, the two characters in Bad Boys 2, they seem like loathsome people who don't care about anyone. Like the scene where that's a ripoff of Police Story, where they drive their cars through a shantytown village.
Yeah, but they, they start that scene was going, it's a crack den. There's just crack.
A line that is like shoehorned in, I think, probably after test screenings, which makes it all the better. It makes it all better because you can see that there are like children's laundry and kids playing stickball or whatever. So it's okay to run them over because their parents are crack dealers.
And which brings up motivation of things. Because in Bad Boys 2, I have no idea what all this carnage is motivated by. They want to get drug dealers, I guess?
Yeah, I think they're bad cops because good cops don't kill that many people and cause that much damage. Yeah, who's their chief? Their
Joey Pants?
Yeah, Joey Pants. When he comes on, he's like, guys, you can't destroy Miami, or you know, whatever.
And the thing is,
I'm in sympathy with him totally.
The scene that preceded that, where they just chased a bunch of people that stole drugs, they killed like 100 people.
Yeah.
You see innocent people being gunned down.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if you ask Michael Bay about it, he's like, oh yeah, I want to show the collateral damage that happens in these kind of gunfights. But then there's no, like, it's never brought up again. They don't even get suspended or anything like that.
Yeah, they're awful. I mean, the drug dealers are causing not nearly as much awful damage as they are.
If anything, all we see that the drug dealers do is kill a bunch of douchebags doing X in some like fancy club. Who cares?
Yeah, you know what? I agree.
And you know, that club scene is like Michael Bay at his noxious worst, where like women are treated as nothing but objects. And I mean, as a point of comparison, John Woo doesn't really treat women that much better in the sense that they don't really have a place in his films.
Yeah.
While Michael Bay treats them as, I don't know, like, there's a main female character in Bad Boys 2 who is treated like a prop that has no, she has no opinion of her own, that she's dating Will Smith, and Will Smith doesn't want to tell Martin Lawrence. And why won't he just tell him?
What a stupid subplot that is, because it doesn't even mean anything. It's like, it has no. It's like every scene in Bad Boys 2 is its own little self-contained island that has no impact on any other scene, and then eventually it ends.
So what you're trying to say is that it's like a Hong Kong film where if you take the scenes out of the context of their feature-length running time, maybe that's how Michael Bay one day is going to sit back and go, that's how the movies were supposed to be watched.
I mean, the difference between Michael Bay and like a good Hong Kong movie is that I hate all the scenes in Bad Boys 2. Like, do you remember that scene where they're in a morgue?
Yes.
And they're like cutting open dead bodies and heads are falling off. Like, what why is that even in the movie?
Well, because they're looking for the drugs, Will. And you need a little bit of comedy to
good stuff.
Make the violence.
That's Michael Bay's kind of comedy, like dead bodies with their heads falling off. I bet he like picked the wings off moths and stuff as a kid.
Well, you don't think John Woo, hurt small animals? Because his films are violent. Like, really violent.
In real life, John Woo is a peace-loving man, is he not? Didn't he, consider going to the seminary?
Yes, he did.
Yes.
That was one of the... and I mean, John Woo as a person supposedly loves guns, but he hates violence. Chow Yun-Fat hates guns.
but loves violence.
I set Will up for that, and he went right for it.
Yeah.
And we should talk about the climax of Hard Boiled, because that's probably the most famous thing of the movie, right?
Yeah,
and
it's
how
great.
long it is, and how acrobatic.
How do you think it works? Because that's a mystery to me, how he's able to sustain it for 40 minutes.
Watching it again, I kind of like timed when the action starts, or from my memory when it started, and it does have kind of peaks and valleys. The thing about something like Bad Boys 2 is that once the action starts, it's unrelenting, and you just go numb and it's all coming in. Like that big freeway chase in Bad Boys 2, which is what it's famous for one, has no impact on anything.
Yeah.
They don't even catch the bad guys. The bad guys just make it away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's it. While Hard Boiled, and every kind of action scene feels a little bit different. Whether it be when they start the action scene and they're using silencers and sneaking around, or they pretend to be a bad guy to take down the other bad guys, or when it's one against everyone, it always feels, varied. While Bad Boys 2 never has that.
And he's carrying a baby, so it kind of like, it kind of lightens the mood a little at times, a little bit of comedy in there.
But at the same time...
There are also so many kind of like spinning plates in the air during the Hard-Boiled one, because they're the babies, and there are various innocent bystanders. They're always...
Who do get mowed down a lot of the movie.
And you feel it.
Yes, you do.
When the innocent bystanders at the hospital get killed.
And John Woo, the action in Hard Boiled is so good. I was talking about this, Will, before we started recording. As a movie fan, I just want John Woo to do more of this. And is that too much to ask from him? Because, he made Hard Boiled. What else does he have to do?
Well, I wonder if you could even make a movie like Hard Boiled anymore. Like, is the infrastructure even in place for it? Are the stuntmen or could you even make a movie that violent in China now? I
mean, John Woo complained a lot, even at that time when he came to do Hard Target, that he would have a stuntman get shot 30 times, and the studio would be like, oh no, he can only be shot 3 times.
Yeah.
Or he would complain that the stuntmen would open their eyes when they went through glass, and he was like, if this was Hong Kong, we would fire them if they did that. So there's just more that's expected from the Hong Kong stuntmen at that time. And the funny thing is that when you talk about films from that era that John Woo was making, you expect them to be quick and fast movies shot from the hip. But that's not true at all. Hard Boiled took forever to make. It took months and months and months to get together. Because, that kind of filmmaking. And Michael Bay is one of those guys, to bring it back to him, that he loves to be we do 80 setups a day.
Yeah.
And it's you're so full of shit.
I know you watched some of the production diaries on the DVD.
Of Bad Boys 2? Yes, I did.
Yeah. Do you remember the one where he's talking about making Bad Boys 1, and it's just all these heroic stories about Michael Bay saved the day during Bad Boys 1? It was the studio didn't want to make this scene. And I was like, guys, you have to make this scene. This is I will write you a check right now to make this scene.
I mean, Michael Bay, he just comes off as kind of arrogant and obnoxious.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard tons of that story recently happened. He has that new Benghazi movie coming out, which me and Will are going to see together.
I actually am a little bit excited for that one, yeah.
And he has a story of going to the studio head and saying, I need $10 million to finish this movie the way it needs to be finished. And the studio head is like, nope, we're not giving you that money. Then Michael Bay looked out the window and they were naming a street after him on the lot. And he's like, oh, you named a street after me, but you won't give me that $10 million? I'm going to take a photo of those repairmen putting up that sign. I'm going to tweet it and say what just happened. And he's like, and I got that money.
I don't believe that story at all. I think $10 million. I would not pay $10 million to stop a pissy tweet.
But I mean, the thing is, people keep going to see Michael Bay movies. The Transformers films are ridiculously profitable. Ironically, in China, where they make all their money, while Hard Boiled bombed at the box office. So did The Killer. John Woo was box office poison by the time he went to Hollywood.
Mm-hmm. Although A Better Tomorrow, of course,
was a huge hit. Yeah. That was the one that brought him over the top. Which, on A Better Tomorrow, I love A Better Tomorrow. It's a really great introduction to John Woo's style of cinema because it's not as over the top as Hard Boiled, which people can get a little bit overwhelmed with. But A Better Tomorrow 2 has almost a Bad Boys 2-ish style level of action at the end.
And they're twin brothers and stuff, yeah.
Because supposedly John Woo really didn't want to make it. And Stuart Hark is contractually, you have to make it. And he's like, fine, I'll give you what you want. And that's what A Better Tomorrow 2 is, which is John Woo giving 2 middle fingers and giving the most over-top version of his style. While in A Better Tomorrow 3, which was directed by the producer Choi Hark, it's a prequel starring Chow Yun-fat, because Chow Yun-fat keeps dying in those movies, so they have to figure out ways to bring him back, where it's a woman that teaches him all his cool style and to wear a trench coat and glasses and stuff like that.
Oh, very Batman Begins.
Yes!
Yeah, I should check that out.
But like we're talking about the wonder years of John Woo. How do you feel about like when he went to Hollywood and the subsequent movies that he made after that?
I mean, Hard Target is kind of fun, but
I mean, compared to Hard Boiled, it pales.
yeah, and I feel like there was a general sense when people like him and Jackie Chan were coming over to Hollywood at the time, there was the sense of, oh, well, you know, they did all this amazing stuff in Hong Kong. Now let's see what they can do with Hollywood money. And, you know, it really didn't. I mean, the movies that John Woo made in Hollywood are sort of like crap Hollywood movies with a bit of John Woo style.
Are you a fan of Face Off?
No, not really.
Oh, really?
I know that's a bit of an unpopular opinion. I think it's overlong, and I enjoy John Travolta and Nick Cage's performances, as one does. I think it's a little bloated, and I think it pales in comparison to any of his Hong Kong ones. And I think the plot is dumb, not always in a good way.
That's the thing, is that when you compare him to the Hong Kong work, there'll always be pale imitations.
Yeah.
I think Face Off is probably the closest that he got to his kind of Hong Kong style of action cinema.
Also, I feel like his aesthetic became sort of self-parody in Hollywood. It just didn't quite work when it was Jean-Claude Van Damme in the trench coat in slow motion, or Tom Cruise on the motorcycle in slow motion.
And let's not forget Ben Affleck.
Which I never saw. Paycheck.
Oh, you've never seen Paycheck?
No. Why should I?
It's not good.
How about, did you like Redcliffe?
I really like Redcliffe.
I only saw the butchered American cut.
Which the editor of Hard Boiled and Redcliffe re-edited the international version. He says he actually likes that version better.
Oh, okay.
Than the 2-movie version, which he feels is a little overlong.
I remember finding it kind of like a very standard kind of Chinese super production. And, you know, there's a scene with a dove.
Yes. I mean, that's the thing that, you know, you have to consider now, is that John Woo just can't make the movies that he used to make because of the state that China is. Mostly for moral reasons.
Yeah.
Is that Chinese censors are really hard on that. While back in 1992, Woo could just tack on an ending where the bad guys get killed or the kind of anti-heroes get killed. Now the whole movie has to, you know, be in that box.
He might also not want to make those kind of movies anymore. Maybe he's just an older man now who likes stately costume epics.
I mean, the last movie he made in Hong Kong was a two-parter called The Crossing, which is supposed to be China's Titanic.
Yeah.
It was not well received.
I'm not interested in that, and I'm kind of resigned to John Woo being done for me.
Oh, really? You think that he's giving you everything that he can give you?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe he'll have a decent movie on kind of as a journeyman director. I think I'd resign him being a journeyman from now on. And there might be decent movies to come, but I don't think anything will capture my heart like...
Would you be interested in a John Woo musical?
Yes, I would.
That's the one thing that you'd be like, I'd be there day and day.
Yeah, I would actually be there.
His movies are basically musicals as is. Like the way that the violence happens in a balletic way, which I remember when I would show the films to my friends, a lot of them would be like, I don't like that. That's not realistic. Like they'd have to reload their guns and stuff like that. And you just want to yell at them. You're like, it doesn't matter.
Do they ask that question in a James Bond movie?
I'm sure some people do.
Yeah, well.
And it's that kind of like... You need to do that suspension of disbelief. As long as the film sets up its own rules that it follows, like anything goes. While going back to Michael Bay and Bad Boys 2.
Love him.
One of the issues that I had as far as the action working in the movie is that Will Smith and Martin Lawrence are never in any danger at all.
Yeah, they're so cocky, aren't they?
Yeah.
Very, very arrogant. None of them breaks a sweat.
And why can we believe that Chow Yun-fat could do all these crazy flips and stuff like that? But when I see Martin Lawrence's stunt double do it, I'm like, I don't think so.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because Martin Lawrence does a lot of flips.
The John Woo characters show like a little bit more vulnerability, I think, which helps.
While Bad Boys 2 has none of that, which means the action scenes don't work.
You remember the scene in Bad Boys 2 where a guy's come over to go on a date with Martin Lawrence's daughter?
Yes.
And then the two of them terrorize this poor man at the door.
And not even in like a funny way.
No, in a really unpleasant way. And they keep saying the N-word over and over again. And it may like is the entire creative team aside from them white?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
Do you think Michael Bay, as two white guys talking here, we can take offense with that?
Well, listen, I'm not. If someone wants to contradict me on this, then they can. I know that it made me uncomfortable.
Do you think Michael Bay is in a position where no one's saying no to him?
Yes.
and that's why these movies are the way they are?
Well, I think it's possible maybe on budgetary reason. I know sometimes he works with Steven Spielberg as a producer, and I'm sure Steven Spielberg is a man of strong opinions.
Do you think Steven Spielberg is like, Michael, I don't think you could do this? Because Michael Bay's, if there's one thing that is a constant in all Bay's films, they're really racist.
Yeah, like the kind of jive-talking Transformers, for instance.
Yep.
I bet Michael Bay is the kind of guy who's like, yeah, I just don't see race.
You think that's what happened?
Yeah.
Like the two robots in Transformers 2?
Or he's probably like the kind of guy who's kind of like, yeah, we don't need political correctness. That's the modern day fascism.
No homo, guys.
Yeah.
Where do you think Michael Bay's career is going, though, from here? Do you think he'll continue to make more Transformer movies?
Oh, sure, probably. If the Benghazi one doesn't do well, then he'll probably just make another franchise.
Or do you think that Benghazi could lead to more of an Oscar-winning,
No.
crowd population?
No. If Pearl Harbor couldn't do it, then I don't think Benghazi will.
What did you think of Pearl Harbor, though, when you saw it?
I thought it was shit.
Even as like a 16, 17-year-old?
Yeah, it was garbage. I mean, it's just so self-evidently garbage.
I remember being charmed by Pearl Harbor when I saw it.
I liked Roger Ebert's line that he started the review with, where it was Pearl Harbor tells the story of a day in 1941 when Japan launched an invasion on American Love Triangle.
So you see no future for Michael Bay.
No future making good movies. Plenty of future making bad movies.
What will you say that if he makes a movie that you unabashedly love?
I'll say, hey, I'll hand it to him. I'll say, that's great. Good job.
You won't be like, click, like, you win, Bay.
No, I won't kill. I would welcome a good movie from him. I like to think I'm open-minded. I like to think people can change.
What if Bay was like, Will, I promise to make you a movie, but to do that, you're going to have to come see every movie I make.
No, I don't care that much. There are lots of good movies out there, and if he makes one and I miss it, that's fine.
So what you're trying to say is that Michael Bay and John Woo are in the same place for you. Is that you have no interest in their career from this point on?
Yes, with the caveat that I would probably rather watch any future John Woo movie than any future Michael Bay movie.
And as far...
I'm not against watching future John Woo movies.
Yes.
I'm just not excited about it.
And we didn't actually bring up the kind of style of filmmaking that Hard Boiled has and Bad Boys 2, because Hard Boiled and Bad Boys 2 on paper are almost the same. Quick cuts and like a lot of action happening at once. But
I'm sure if we had Bordwell and Thompson in here, they could lay out like all the times the Bad Boys 2 violates the various rules of composition.
It's in the production diaries that are on the DVD. There is a very specific moment where it's like the directors of the diaries are going, listen, these movies are shit and they're not well edited. Where you see them do a shot of a gun being pulled out of someone's shirt and pointed at Martin Lawrence, and you see him do it a bunch of times, and then in a subtitle it says, they used 14 frames of this in the movie. And then you see it in the movie, and it actually stops and go, did you miss it?
Well, that's the thing about Michael Bay. He's always like challenging your perceptions. I know that there are people who have done defenses of Michael Bay as kind of an innovative editor and someone with a, who breaks a lot of rules and creates his own aesthetic. And I think those people are just wasting their time. Like, watch a good movie instead.
But what about The Rock? I love The Rock.
The actor The Rock?
I love Dwayne The Rock Johnson, but I also love Michael Bay's The Rock.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Pain and Gain.
So what is your position on that? That is arguably his.
I have never seen it.
You've never seen it?
Yeah.
So maybe you'll see it and be like, man, that's fantastic.
Well, everyone says that it's, all the people whose opinions I respect say that it's his best movie. So.
Okay.
But I still think that I would only like it so much, even if I liked it.
This podcast feels like it's been filled with so much bile and hate over Michael Bay.
You gotta understand, I just watched Bad Boys 2. I'm still like shaken from the experience.
But in even a more broader sense, like what would you recommend? Like what do you like as action movies? Because maybe the people listening are like, he just doesn't understand it.
Yeah.
He doesn't understand what Bay is going out.
Well, I do have a lot of hate in my heart, just generally. I'm a very vile and angry man.
So but I mean, you have your bona fide. You like Jackie Chan. You like John Woo.
I would say my taste in action sort of like overwhelmingly goes to like Hong Kong movies of that period.
Well, I mean,
and in terms of stuff that I enjoy, even though it's not very good, of course I enjoy any sort of Arnold Schwarzenegger or 80s Stallone movie or Steven Seagal or any of that garbage that everyone enjoys.
I mean, let's make a controversial statement right here. No one has done action cinema better than Hong Kong ever.
I agree.
Yes. Well, and Michael Bay seems to be chasing that ghost of Hong Kong cinema without ever really understanding what's going on. I recently watched Wind Talkers a few years ago. I don't know if you've seen that.
No, I haven't seen that, yeah.
That's a film I love, only because it's so dumb, and it feels like someone explained to John Woo what like Saving Private Ryan was, and he's like, okay, I get it. You know, they're doing flips and stuff like that, and it's really overdramatic, and Christian Slater gets his head cut off by a samurai sword, and yeah, no, I understand. And when you watch that movie, it's basically a Hong Kong film in the melodramatic plot of those World War II movies that are coming out around then, like Heart's War, and
yeah. I wonder if that movie was supposed to be an Oscar kind of movie.
Oh, I feel like it was. Like, it was a huge production.
It was released in the dead of, like, in kind of like August or something, as sort of a wannabe summer blockbuster.
By that same respect, I feel like Michael Bay, especially with stuff like Bad Boys 2, he's looking at John Woo's films and he's like, I want to do this, but he doesn't quite understand like what makes those movies so special.
Yeah.
And why they work so well. So you're not excited for Bad Boys 3 then?
Is that coming?
Yeah.
Oh, I think I did see that.
Michael Bay keeps threatening it. And something that we actually didn't bring up for either film, probably because they're the weakest aspect, is the scripts.
Yeah, who cares? Well, you know, these.
But you know who wrote Hard Boiled 2, and it was his final script.
Who?
It was the guy who wrote all of Jackie Chan's films in his heyday.
Okay.
Barry Wong.
I didn't even know this movie's had scripts. Hard Boiled is a fine script. It's
fine.
Adequate.
It's very, you know,
gets the job done,
and it's not, you know, overlong. There's no bad comedy scenes in it, and so like scripts don't really matter for these movies, but structure does. While Hard Boiled has a great structure, Bad Boys 2 has a super shitty structure.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, if you were gonna thematically sum up what we talked about today, it's that you hate Michael Bay.
Yeah, if I could, like, if you want something to put on my tombstone, I would put that. Although, you know, now that you mentioned Bad Boys 3, I'm a little bit intrigued by the fact that it's like the Before Sunrise, Before Sunset movies, where it seems like every 10 years there's a new Bad Boys movie, and you get to catch up with these characters.
Do you think the personality will have changed? Because like
Martin
Lawrence looks sad and old now.
I mean,
have you seen Big Mama's House 3?
Yes, I have.
What?
I was a film critic. I reviewed it. Yeah.
How many stars did you give it?
I reviewed it for publication where I did not have to give it a star.
If you had to, what would it be?
1. Like, it's a terrible movie.
Okay. So, on your tombstone, you want I hate Michael Bay.
No, I don't want anything about Big Mamas on my tombstone. That was not a defining chapter of my life.
Well, Michael Bay did not direct Big Mamas 3.
Yeah, and that is to his credit.
On that note, my name is Jonathan Blue.
My name is Wilson.
Thanks for listening.